Hello, and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview. This is a show where we take a look at what's coming in the current edition of the North Coast Journal. I am your host, Tanya Shrum, and we are joined by North Coast Journal's managing editor, Jennifer Fumiko Cahill. Welcome!
How you doing, Tanya?
I am lovely, as are you, as usual.
Oh, thank you so much. Just perfect for radio as well. We are coming up. This is the last week I think that we'll be talking before the actual holiday music comes up, and we're already Christmased out, by the way, in this office. You can't see, of course, but there are a ton of lights. The tree is going up. We're starting to put out all of our journal holiday flair ahead of Thanksgiving. I know it's disgusting, but we've started.
I was going to say, I have strict rules about nothing red and green goes up till December 1st. My house is still adorned in fall regalia.
We lack the discipline. We just went all in.
As much as I would like to put up my Halloween decorations in September, I wait till October 1st.
That is discipline. You are tough.
Well, we have some lovely stories to get to and some very thoughtful stories as well. Jennifer, you have this week's cover and you want to fill us in on this bittersweet tale.
Yeah, this is a story that involves our journal staff a little bit. So it's called The Stopwatch. And it goes back to a journal story that we ran back in 2003. So basically what happened is Melissa Sanderson, my boss, my publisher, usually is not the person to answer the phone at the journal, but on this particular day she did back in August, and a woman with a Chicago accent got on the phone with her and said she wanted to talk about this article that we ran called Nightmare at Sea. And that was by Jeff Fine, and it ran, like I said, in January of 2003. And the article was, and I went back and read this. The article was about the sinking of the SS Badger State. Now, that's not something that happened locally, but it was connected to a local man. There was a gentleman named William Willie Burnett, and he lived in Cutton, and he died there in 2002. And among his things that were sold at an estate sale, and among those things, there were lots of books that he had from his career as a merchant marine, some photo album scrapbooks, and a stopwatch. The scrapbooks and the stopwatch both were related to the SS Badger State. The scrapbooks were all kind of following the sinking of the ship and also the hearings that followed to determine if there was neglect, fault, etc. And the stopwatch came in an envelope that had Willie Burnett's writing on it, describing that this was rescued from the ship just as they abandoned it on the 26th of December. And that would have been also, I think, that was in the Pacific, mid-Pacific, over by Midway Island. So it might have been the 26th or there, and then the 25th in Chicago. But I digress. So this stopwatch was rescued from the ship as it went down, essentially. And it was a merchant marine vessel. And a gentleman named Steve DeGotti, who used to work for Juvenile Hall as a counselor, he was sort of a history buff. He still is. He came by the office just the other day with an old piece of something that he's interested in tracking down. And he found this collection and this stopwatch and was like, this is interesting. And this is an interesting piece of history. And he went down the rabbit hole of learning about it, and then Fine wrote about it for the journal. And what it was basically is a bunch of ships were bringing munitions to Vietnam during the Vietnam War in 1969. And these were merchant marine vessels that were going to Da Nang by way of Hawaii and sort of passing Hawaii. And they were bringing bombs, among other things, to an Air Force base. And some of them aerial bombs. Now, these went from small ammunition for guns and things all the way up to 2,000-pound, what they call blockbusters. So these are all in the ship's holds. And they were going along for about a day or so when a storm hit. So they're hit by the storm with these massive waves. They're taking some damage from that and patching up holes and things, patching up damage on this ship. And then another storm hit. Eventually, the bombs come loose from their rigging in the ship's hold, and they are rolling around. And it is just about the scariest thing. This ended up being an 11-day ordeal. That 9 of those days were spent with the bombs rolling loose in the hold and men throwing mattresses and things on top of them to keep them from sparking. Eventually, after they started poking through the hull because they were falling and all the scary things you can imagine, eventually there was an explosion. About 14 of the men were rescued from the water after having to abandon ship by a Greek vessel that was in the area. But it was a crew of 40 men, 26 of them died. So Willie Burnett was one of the survivors, and hence all of this material. Another family connected to the ship was this woman from Chicago. So Maureen Reike Foster, she has remarried, but she was married to Ray Foster, who was an engineer, and he was on the ship. She was pregnant, and he was on the ship sailing. He sent her a letter before they left, and he said, this is a rust bucket, and the stevedores are just throwing the bombs onto the hold, and he commented that it was not super reliable. And then that was the last she heard of him. They never recovered his body. They only recovered one body from the debris. But for all these years, her daughter never met her father. For all these years, they have really been kind of frozen in this kind of grief that you have when you don't have a body to bury, when someone is lost at sea. It's a different kind of grief. And years ago, she read this story and she thought about the stopwatch, and it kind of haunted her. And then recently, when she was assembling some things for the Merchant Marine Academy, which was doing a memorial piece for Ray Reike, her husband, her first husband, and she thought about it again. She sent it to her brother, sent him the story, and he was like, you got to go get this stopwatch. You got to go get it. And they wanted to give it to Katie, her daughter, who never met her dad. So she was like, I don't even know if the journal's in business anymore. But Michael, who I had the pleasure of meeting, was just really like, you got to do this. Big, sentimental, as she put it, Irish mush of a man. And they called the journal, and Melissa, my boss, I should give you an aside, which is that her powers of stalking are occult. If you think you can hide from Melissa Sanderson because you're unlisted, the way that she will track, if you casually tell her a story about somebody you went to high school with, the way she will track them down and be like, I'm looking through their Ring camera on their porch right now. You know what I mean? Like, it's amazing. A little frightening. I have no secrets from the woman, I don't think. But she tracked down Steve DeGotti, who was the guy who bought this lot and who researched the sinking. And after about a week or so, he got back to her. And he was at first he was like, I don't know, I don't want to sell this stopwatch to just some rando who's just collecting war memorabilia. And she was like, no, let me tell you about this family. And he was like, I would love to give them the stopwatch. And so Michael, big Irish mush brother, actually flew from Illinois to Humboldt to Eureka to meet and pick up the stopwatch. As he put it, this is too important. It demands a road trip. And it was really something to learn about the family, to learn about Ray Reike, and to learn about the Badger State. He would have been in the engine room because of his job, and as Maureen put it, you know, she knew what she knew from the hearings and things that she attended when she was pregnant and stressed out and grieving, was that he would have been in the 100-degree engine room, struggling to keep the ship going, struggling to keep it afloat. Everybody was just 11 days fighting to keep the boat afloat, to keep everybody alive, to keep the bombs from going off. And also, I'm sure, trying to maintain some positivity. And over the course of writing this story, I also read a really interesting book, if anybody is desperate to learn more about the history of this and the history of, honestly, ship sinkings in general. This book has a lot of it. It was called Sailing into the Abyss. Yeah, it's not a fun read, but it is really fascinating, and it talks about different kinds of ships and how things went. And through extensive interviews with survivors, including the captain, this author has really recreated how things went on the ship. And they kept on having these moments where they thought, okay, this is going to be it. There's a Greek ship coming to the area, or this is going to be it. We're going to detour to Pearl Harbor. No, we're going to detour toward Midway Atoll, or we're going to, and they kept on trying to find the next thing to overcome the next problem. And things just kept happening. Storms kept coming, 20-foot waves kept coming. And all the while, as they're trying to secure things, trying to work on the boat, the ship is tipping 45 and 50 degrees. And as Fine put it in his initial article, 50 degrees is about how far you tip to get water out of your ear. And if you can imagine being on a boat like that, and someone else described the bombs as moving around like a pit of vipers, just rolling around in the hull. It's really terrifying, but it is, again, a bittersweet story, because what a horrendous experience. And yet, when Katie got the stopwatch back from her uncle, it was really a beautiful moment. And honestly, to me, it's worth the whole crazy reliving of it for this family, because they got something out of it that felt very, very much like a connection to Ray Reike. And I thought that was beautiful.
Well, Jennifer, I really appreciate this story, and I encourage everybody to pick up this week's journal and read the entire tale. Before we move on to the rest, do you have anything else you'd like to share?
You know, I think something that I really enjoyed was getting to know this family and getting to know Steve DeGotti a little bit, and seeing two very different kinds of people come together, and the coincidence of it all, and of Steve still having the stopwatch 13 years after this article was published, was really kind of moving and hopeful. And so we were really glad to at least have a story that had a happy ending of some kind.
Right. Some peace long after the fact. Excuse me. And with that, we're going to move on. We have a story coming to us from Caden Downing that is very moving, and let us know what you'd like to share about it, Jennifer.
So Caden Downing is a member of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. You may know them instead as Kit Caboodle, Mistress of Propaganda, and they really did a great job, I thought, in this views piece. It's an opinion piece talking about the upcoming, because we're in the Transgender Week of Resistance, and it is a really fine line to talk about transgender folks and issues facing them without becoming bogged down in hopelessness. It is rough out there. And Caden talks about how in 2025 alone, he points out there have been 123 bills passed limiting transgender rights and jeopardizing their safety. 1,003 are still being considered. If you go to translegislation.com, they have a running list going, and you can see what's happening. And it is wild, and he goes into detail about this, thinking about this like it's some new kind of like red scare that has to be addressed, when trans people have always been with us. Not always under that name, and not always with the vocabulary that we use here in North America today, but they have always been with us. And he touches on some other cultures that have a space for trans people, and he also touches on a thing that I did not know about, which is Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld. What's up, ally from the previous century? At the turn of the 20th century, he was the founder of the Institute for Sexual Sciences and did some of the first sexual reassignment surgeries, advocated for LGBTQ plus people. And it's really, I got a whole evening's worth of rabbit hole internet dive on that alone. But he talks about, Caden talks about how sometimes just existing as you are, as your authentic self, as you are meant to be, makes you have to be an activist, makes you have to fight for your right to exist as you are and how you are meant to be. And it's sort of an unfair burden, right? Why can't you just coast and do your thing? Why do you have to explain it to people? Why do you have to fight for it? Why does this have to be a whole thing? Why can't I just be myself like everybody else? And he talks about this as both a burden, but also an opportunity. And he says, not every trans person should need to become a political activist, health expert, and historian to argue the case of their own survival. But that is the world we live in. And he talks about the previous generations and all the people in history from Marsha P. Johnson on. And he, also Albury Cashier, Union veteran of the Civil War, trans soldier, what do you know? And it is really something to think about that history in terms of how worked up the right wing of this country has gotten people artificially about a group of people who have always been here, just existing, living their lives. And it's worth a read. It's a great piece of perspective and something to think about when you are attending Trans Week of Resistance events, which you will find in the North Coast Journal's calendar this week.
Absolutely. And bring your allyship and your compassion and go out there and be part of the resistance. And with that, we're going to wrap up the journal with a little bit of caroling coming.
Yeah, now the holiday decorations early don't seem so crazy because already A Christmas Carol is happening. Da, 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 da. Tigger Bouncer Custodio went to the production that's happening right now at the 5th and D Street Theater, North Coast Repertory Theaters, doing A Christmas Carol. And it's a fun one. It's not exactly the same as every other Christmas Carol you've seen. Hey, Muppet Christmas Carol, you're still the best. This
I'm
one
right
takes
there with you on that
I know,
one,
right?
Love
Never
it.
gets old.
Never.
This one takes a few more risks, and as Tigger puts it, really capitalizes on the fact that this is a story we know. It's a familiar story, so we can stretch out and do some more unusual stuff with it, which I will not spoil for you. And I thought this was the best recommendation you could give something. He says the audience left the performance with smiles, peace, and a song, exactly what is needed for a Christmas show. If you need the ease of a simple and beautiful holiday-themed production, this is the one to see. Get your tickets, spike your hot cocoa, relax and smile. Merry Christmas. Tigger is not waiting.
Get your hot toddies now.
I know. I mean, I think there's something wonderful about these productions that we see every year, right? These rituals that we have. We go to see... We watched The Wizard of Oz, which, by the way, this week, Tigger is also going to be reviewing the Wizard of Oz production that's happening in Ferndale. So, very Thanksgiving-y. How did that even become a Thanksgiving thing?
I just think back in the day, it always seemed to be shown that weekend.
Right?
I don't know what executive at the station, CBS or ABC, whoever was showing it that year, it just always seemed to be Thanksgiving weekend.
It kind of stuck, right? Such that when I see it not on Thanksgiving, I crave stuffing. So
I crave Pink Floyd.
But, we have these things, and locally we have, like I said, the Ferndale production of Wizard of Oz is coming, but we have these holiday shows. The Del Arte holiday show is a big one for folks, and also there are sometimes half a dozen Nutcracker shows, the ballets that are happening all over the place, which if you haven't gone to a Nutcracker performance locally, I assume that it's because you don't have any little children or dancers in your life. You should go anyway, because number one, the older dancers are spectacular. You get to see the teachers dance, and also, adult performers like really just killing it. And you realize, oh my God, what a magnitude of talent we have here locally. Every production is slightly different, although more than one has a sugar plum fairy handing out cookies in the lobby during intermission, I have discovered. But also you get to see the little kids sort of tumbling around, the very youngest ones tumbling around on the stage, getting a little distracted. If you can walk out of that without feeling holiday joy, throw yourself in jail before you do something crazy, because you are not right.
It's true. The Nutcracker is also one of those things that you just got to do it once a year and enjoy it.
And this week, Kali she's out of town, but she has left us with a bunch of things to check out. And among them is the beginning of ice skating at the Humboldt County Fairgrounds.
That's right.
Yes. So if you are ready to hit the ice, practice that hockey stop.
Or quite literally hit the ice and break that tailbone.
I am personally a wall clinger. I don't know about you, but I am a clinging to the side, whether it's roller skating or ice skating. But I encourage everybody to try it.
I have lots of padding for ice skating, so I fall pretty well on ice skates. I was never as good as I am on roller skates. That's just the 80s, child. But get out there, enjoy the beginning of that holiday spirit, and pick up your copy of the journal, check out the calendar. There's no reason to have nothing to do. And that wraps up our time this week. Thank you, Jennifer. The current edition of the North Coast Journal will be available on newsstands tomorrow. Pick up your copy, or of course you can find it online at northcoastjournal.com. I am Tanya Schrum. Thanks for being with us and staying informed and supportive here on our North Coast community.